Hola, ¿qué tal? Vamos a hacer una mesa redonda sobre publishers. Hemos juntado aquí a tres buenas piezas para hacerles algunas preguntas. He preparado un guión, algunas preguntas por un lado, para que puedan vender un poco su moto, porque han venido a eso, pero también para desafiarles un poquito. Tengo algunas preguntas un poco más difíciles para ellos, a ver qué les pasa. No, imagino que no están entendiendo lo que digo, menos Juan, pero voy a empezar ya a ello. So I'm going to switch to English now, and I'm going to go with the first question, which is to begin with, just tell us about yourself, introduce yourselves, and straight ahead, just confess your weak point of your company. What is the best way to get your company's attention? So, if you want.
You go.
Hello, my name is and I'm a game scout at Raw Fury. Very excited to be here today and meet some of you for the pitch meetings. So at Raw Fury, I've been for 3 years, and I've been in the games industry for 13 years by now, working at Paradox, Launch, and about weak point. I would say that myself, I'm very weak for co-op. You say your game has co-op or some kind of way for me to play with my friends, I will be very excited.
Hola. Hello, my name is Juan. I'm from Madrid. I'm a producer at Devolver. I've been in the games industry for about 10 years, making my own games, and then stepping into the other side, into the dark side of publishing. And that's it. That's me, I think. And then my weak points, I like pretty much everything. I would be more interested in more mechanically driven games, I think. Something more maybe arcadey. But at the end, it's just, I think it's about quality, whatever that means. If you can measure it. But as for Devolver, I guess it's just any game, if it's good, it's a fit, I guess.
Hello, I'm Chris. I work at two publishers, actually. I do business development at Fellow Traveler, a narrative games publisher out of Australia. So I will be severely excited when I see anything that has any relation to narrative as a whole. And on the other side, I scout for Thunderful, which is a Sweden-based publisher. So I split my time basically between these two parties.
Then telling me that you need to get closer to the microphone. Yeah.
Sorry.
So
did anybody hear what I just said? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Short summary. I work for Fellow Traveler, narrative publisher out of Australia. So I'm very excited about narrative, and I scout for Thunderful, a Sweden-based publisher.
But you need to tell us about your weak point. Like, what is the best way to get your attention? So
definitely narrative games. Big fan of narrative games. You'll get me hooked immediately.
Okay, I feel like I'm a bit in the wrong side because I work with Devolver, and he's like, we like mechanically interesting games and we do narrative stuff. So it's like, okay, nice. So, okay, I'm going to jump into the next question, and we're going to get on why we're here actually. And my question here is like, why come to an event like IndieDevDay? Like, do you expect to strike gold out of a local event like this one, or do you came just for the tapas?
Tapas. No, of course. For me, it's mostly about making the connections. Maybe you are still working very early on your prototype and you're not ready to pitch. I would still like to make connections with you for the future. And of course, I hope that we also will find something.
Well, why come to an event like this? But for me, as a part of this community, of like the Spanish game development community, it's very important to be here. And I think publishers in general, we're responsible of, giving back to the community and just being here and being able to share knowledge, well, not my knowledge because I don't have none, but their knowledge, I think is important. And I don't think it's about a striking goal. I think you cannot go to an event and think, oh, I'm going to sign a game. It's like, well, it might not happen for like, you can go to 20 events and not sign anything because maybe this is just not a click. But just being able to sit down with developers and listen to what they have to say and maybe throw some feedback. Maybe if the game is not for you, I think it's important. And it's not only about, making a business and signing a game, and it's more about, like I was saying at the beginning, like giving back and helping a community grow and people like make that connections and the developers that are here that don't usually have the chance to sit with Raw Fury or Thunderful, or I think that's just great, and I think that's what we hear.
Okay.
Definitely agree with my three co-panelists here. I think as a whole, like local events always open up a new door, new opportunity. I think none of us are coming here with a ready contract with the anticipation of signing anything this weekend, because that's not how scouting works or how meeting people works. But ultimately, not everyone has the money to go to Gamescom or to GDC or to any of the major trade shows as a whole. But if you go to a local event, you get to meet a lot more new studios and people, a lot more intimate. Like yesterday evening, a couple of us, which I will not share due to confidentiality, went out dancing at a club and had a wonderful time and got a chance to meet us on a personal level. That does not happen at Gamescom because people are way too busy running from one meeting to another and meeting with hundreds of people at once. But a more local event just opens up the opportunity to get to know each other a lot better on a personal level. I think that's incredibly valuable if you're thinking about potentially working together in the long run. And even if you don't end up working together in the long run, you've made a lot more personal connections than you would at a major event. So yeah, also, tapas are amazing here.
I mean, this is just a quick follow-up question, but do you think like it is way better to work on a personal connection to sign things? Like it is really valuable or important to actually meet the person and see their vibe or stuff like that, not just like, because you can like pitch stuff through the mail or stuff like that, but maybe like actually sitting and seeing their faces and how they, I mean, do you think that's important and when about to deciding if to work with people?
I think it's more about being available for the questions
Okay.
and the knowledge we can share on how to pitch or coming with feedback on the pitch, because sometimes if you just send it in to a random publisher, you're kind of missing some pieces that is very important for catching our attention.
Okay.
What was the question? Sorry.
That I mean, it was just like a quick follow-up about actually being present at events, and it's like it is really important, the personal connection when about if deciding to sign with someone.
Yeah, I think I'm going to quote one of our colleagues at production, Andrew. He told me once, like, what you want from a game at the very end is for it to have a soul. And that soul you can only find making the connection with the person that is actually making the game. You will never get the soul of the game if you don't know who's making it. So I think it's really key, right?
Okay. You agree with that? Like,
Nothing to add.
okay, perfect. So next, I just want to tell all these people here that came just to see us, why do they actually need a publisher, or if they need one to begin with? Like, why should them work with you or want to work with you?
Do you want to switch and start?
Sure. I don't necessarily think you need a publisher. So it really depends. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you don't sign with a publisher because then we'll all be out of business and that's bad. But as a whole, I like to split things up into two categories of what a publisher can provide to you. On the one hand, it's funding, very clear, money, you need it to make games, obviously, and then there's services. And that contains basically everything else, from handling porting, the localization, even if it's marketing, PR, community management, etc., everything outside. And as a developer, you typically And that's a very simplified approach here. You find yourself in two situations, or in three, I guess. You need the funding, just the funding, in which case there's plenty of other options out there. If you're just looking for funding, there's probably better deal terms out there just looking to work with a fund, looking to work with a partner such as Kowloon Knights, for example, and all the other parties that are out there providing just solely the funding. If you're looking for just services, there's service providers. You can get yourself a publisher for hire. There's companies out there like Future Friends or a Pop Agenda that do an amazing job at just providing those services for different deal terms than a publisher would. Sometimes a flat fee, sometimes a revenue share that's a little bit more in your favor than a publisher would. But if you find yourself in a situation where you need both, you need the funding, but you also need the services, where there's someone there supporting you, handling, maybe coming in as a co-producer or doing just the marketing, PR, outreach, etc. Whatever services they might be. Publishers often can be someone that takes something off of your shoulder, and that can be incredibly valuable if you just want to focus on making your games. It's a very simplified approach. It always depends on the situation that you're in. Done some of those hybrid models and understand if it's the right thing for you, because there's no easy answer, and more often than not, you might be better off just working with other parties than a publisher, because that's just a little bit more tailored to you. That being said, consider publishers. We're also not awful people who want to work with you oftentimes.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, I think, to what Chris said. But for me, when I was making my own games, what I was looking for in a publisher was just knowledge. I think I was making a game, and beyond making the game, like actually making the game, I didn't know what we were doing. Like, it's just okay, I can grab things, put them into Unity, and make them work, but then what, right? So I think that knowledge, not only like the publisher is not only a bank, but is probably a set of people that has been making games for a long time on that side of the industry, and have worked in several projects that some might be similar to yours, so they have probably, some thoughts that could be really valuable to make your game just better. And then another thing that was really key for me when I was there looking out for a publisher is just an audience. I said audience that is sort of there already, like at least a few people that you can already reach out through, Steam or, social media or stuff like that. There's people that is already there, whether just building your audience, like your own audience from scratch, can be real hard and takes loads of money that you probably don't have. So I think it's two things what took me to, okay, I'm going to go out and look for a publisher, because I don't know anything about anything and I don't have an audience.
Yeah, if you only want to focus on making your game and not everything surrounding with marketing, support, porting, and you want someone else to do all of that for you, I mean, that's why you would pick a publisher. But I agree, it's not the only option, but if you don't want to search for the audience, yes.
Having said that about what publishers have to add to a project, it's just a quick follow-up on this. Like, how hands-on you like to be on a project? Like, how do you share like your expertise with developers to tell them how to make the games better, or how to make them, I don't know, like how much do you like to be into the process of actually making the game?
Yes, like at Raw Fury, we have like weekly or bi-weekly meetings with like a producer and a brand person on our side, guiding the developers, also trying to help them if they don't have someone for voice acting. Like, we try to be there as a support for all kind of parts that they would need. So it can be anything.
I can only answer this like on my personal experience. I like to get my hands as dirty as possible with the games, just like playing loads, feedback, But at the end, the game is from the developer, and they can only make the decisions, right? But I think it's great to, for me, it's great to just be there and be able to, share my thoughts all the time and just back and forth. But yeah, at the end, it's just their decision, I guess.
Yeah, same thing. As hands-on as possible without enforcing it. Ultimately, like, it's the developer's vision. We don't want to get involved. We will make recommendations as a publisher because we've seen, like, many of our team members have worked on games themselves in the past, and they've seen 10, 15, 20 games under a label be released, so there's some experience there. But if the developer overrules us in their decision on how they want to, which path they want to go, which path they want to follow, then that's their decision, and we will respect that ultimately.
Yeah, like it's a communication, not an enforcing, like more like supporting with everything. Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, I'm going to move on now about the bad part of publishing, like what we all think, because it happened to me that before signing with a publisher, I thought that publishers were more like music labels, that you know them for being exploitative and being evil and stuff. And even if I know nowadays that there are publishers that are quite nice, I still heard many horror stories about bad deals and how a publisher can ruin your life actually. So what would you say are the best practices when about to finding a publisher or signing a deal, or how to avoid falling into these horror stories? And I guess it is beside signing with you, because I guess you all think you are great. So how to avoid these horror stories?
Yeah, like the first rule is to always like talk with a lawyer before you sign anything. But then look at different kind of contracts, talk to developers and compare. Like very recently, I talked with developers and I thought like, oh, I really want to proceed with these. But then it turns out their contract with their other publisher is like first right to anything they make as a next project. And that's, I would say that's not a good deal because you cannot, like if you didn't like working with them, they would still have rights to your next project.
I don't know what to add. I think I would go back to, the best practice is probably going back and asking yourself, is you actually need a publisher? Like, because I feel like sometimes, and I've done this myself, like I just automatically think I need a publisher. Like, I'm going to go for a publisher. Like, I'm making a game, so I need a publisher. And I think that can only lead to, more like desperation or more like, yeah, feeling like you need something, but you don't really know how it works. You just like up for anything. And I've seen developers signing like awful deals just because they thought they needed a publisher. And, this publisher will give them like 10K and that's it, like no other services. And then they're taking a cut of your game, right? And it's like, well, you just didn't think it through. Like, of course, it's everything that Maya said, like about, the more legal approach, which is super important, but also it's like really thinking about it and reaching out, like, hey, I have this deal, just share it with people, just break a few NDAs is fine, I think.
Yeah, definitely find the people in the industry that you trust. Obviously, technically speaking, and I'm not telling you should be breaking any NDAs, of course not, it's important. There's the term for NDA. Go out there, compare, understand what other people have been offered, understand what other people are saying about the publisher. If you were coming to pitch Fellow Traveler, us, I would pretty much expect you to also be going out there to our developers that we've worked with before and asking them for feedback. Talk to people that whose games have performed really well. Talk to people whose games have performed maybe not as well as they had expected or just a little bit poorer overall in performance, and you can just basically go on Steam and look at review counts and be like, okay, this game did really well, this game maybe didn't do incredibly well. Talk to those developers. You'll get many different opinions, many different data points basically of how happy they were with a partner. Don't stop at one developer. Take many different perspectives because everyone has a different experience at the end of the day. And as you had said, like get a lawyer 100%. It's a lot of money, but it's important at the end of the day. Your best friend who has read a contract before doesn't know as much as a lawyer does, and make sure to invest that money up front because you might regret it otherwise at the end. Plus, with publishers as a whole, and that always depends, like with a good lawyer, there is room for negotiation. Like you can still, the deal terms aren't amazing, figure out what you can arrange to make it a little bit more pleasant in your favor.
Actually, at Raw Fury, you mentioned the money for lawyer. We actually offer money to hire a lawyer. And I don't know if other publishers do that, but I think they should. So you get an opinion that is not the publisher about the contract.
I wanted to add something. And it's about, I think another best practice is, I've found many developers that would pitch us their game, and they will be like, oh, you know, I'm not pitching to anyone, like I'm just showing this to you, and I'm holding for your decision in order to keep pitching or not. It's like, just don't do that, just pitch to everyone at the same time, like just, it's only normal, it's only natural. In these things usually take loads of time. So if you're just pitching to the one and then to another one and then to another one, you're just wasting more of your time. So just go for everyone at once, and I think that will be just save you time. And another thing is that I feel like some developers are scared to like negotiate with the publisher, like say no to something in a contract, like, well, that's a no-go for us. And they will just don't say it. They will just like, oh my God, we have to accept this. And it's like, well, maybe you don't, just ask. Because most likely the people on the other side of the email are just human beings that can, you know, talk to you about what you don't like in the contract and maybe just make a change. So just be brave and say no.
I mean, I feel like I have the sensation that in the Spanish industry we don't like to invest in lawyers.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah, but would you recommend to actually have like a lawyer on your side or hire someone to before dealing with publishers signing anything?
I understand it's difficult, and I've been in that position myself. Like just the fact of finding a lawyer in Spain that knows about these media and speaks English and understands like legal English, and it can be very hard. But I think there's places to go for advice, like associations, like groups of developers. I don't want to say the names. Ask me later. That they offer like legal advice and stuff like that. So maybe that's a good entry point. I think it's free, like to just go and ask for that. Like, hey, I need legal advice for this contract or this deal. Can you help me? And they will help you, I think. And then I think it's a good start point. But yeah, I understand like most, like honestly, I like the couple of deals I signed when I was a developer, I never hired a lawyer. Do it. Was bad deals, so just do it.
I don't think you need a lawyer until it's time to actually like when you got an offer and it's time to sign the contract. And I think you can ask for advice from other developers that you know have been working with either that publisher or like someone in the same country. For Raw Fury, we have been working very closely with Brainwash Gang and Out of the Blue. And if it comes to, you know, you want to sign with Raw Fury and we give you an offer, talk to them and they can probably recommend you some Spanish lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, there should be like an extra talk about lawyers hiring lawyers for games in Spain, because I think we don't do that at all, and we are everyone talking about, oh, I got a shitty deal, and we just signing blindly everything in Spain. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, this is the last question I had prepared. It's kind of more of thinking about the future of publishing and what might be the new relationship with publishers and developers. And it's not like 10 years ago. Maybe there are many well-established publishers nowadays. I think you three are part of them here. And as a business model, a publisher now, a well-established publisher, can afford to invest in many games, and some of them, they are bound to become a success and be profitable. So as a business model, it's like a safe bet. You're not going to go bankrupt as a publisher. But then on the other side, indies, we are still often a group of friends that want to make a game, and failing after you have invested everything you had, all your savings, you've been preparing your whole life maybe to try to make it, and failing, becoming one of those projects that don't quite make it, can be fatal for us. So are you thinking, do you have any kind of plan to how to accommodate these failed projects? What's your relationship with failed projects in your publishers? And do you have, or maybe you think like, well, that's that. I mean, that's a business, and people should be responsible for their failings and stuff. And how do you deal with this in your publishing?
So as a company, we're not in the business of acquisition, which is obviously like one option that makes it a little bit more bulletproof for developers to stay afloat long term. What we like to focus on usually is sequels or next titles, so basically establishing a long-term relationship with a developer. Because yeah, from a pure business standpoint, it's good for you. It's good for, well, should be good for you if the deal terms are right. It's good for us because we're working with people that know that we have a certain expectation because they've shipped a game with us in the past. And it just establishes a more long-term partnership, which in this industry doesn't hurt to know who you're dealing with. Otherwise, when it comes to existing titles and existing studios whose titles have shipped, the way we typically approach business as a whole, when it comes to just very standard business development, I mean, we're going out there every week pitching to parties, if it's Humble Choice or Physical Deal or Xbox Game Pass, all these different opportunities. And we always look at the entire portfolio. Like right now, without going into too much details, which I definitely shouldn't, we're signing a deal for a title that's been out for about 6 years at this point, which wasn't a commercial success at that time. But now there's a good chunk of money coming in because we've kept it in our pitch decks. And every time we pitch a new partner, we're like, hey, here's our upcoming stuff. But also look at all the cool stuff that we've released in the past and why you should probably also buy into this deal because it's a cool title. And so there's always a focus on making sure that developers that we've worked with in the past are taken care of as much as possible. Again, like there's studios that might not manage to stay afloat for years to come, and that's a terrible feeling for everyone involved. So we want to avoid it as much as possible and keep talking to studios. But yeah, there's no 100% bulletproof solution to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's great that the landscape has changed a bit, so it's not a one-shot thing. Like, but what I would only add to what Chris said is maybe plan for failure in your, schedules or production plans. Just plan for that. Plan for a few months after the game is out where things are not going as expected. Then plan for that. Ask for funding for those months, and then, yeah, let's just see if any of those, long tail deals with platforms or whatever can help you thrive. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we also want to work long term with our developers. So we actually ask them before the release to start working on their next project, like show us your pitch for your next game. And also in the cases where, the release didn't go as planned, maybe there's other ways. Maybe we can find a deal for VR or other kind of deals that can help the developer for the time being, or maybe there's other kinds of things we can do to help by maybe funding a prototype for something that we're really interested in. I think there's tons of stuff. We don't want to see our developers fail.
Okay. But then, I guess that in the end it boils down to we're going to try to do our best for your game to not be a failure. But do you think you're confident that at least you have like the muscle or the power to earn back when you invest in a game? Like the bare minimum is to try to make back the money you spent on doing this, so you don't end up like with zero. You can end up like a bit ahead, or do you think that often it may happen like, okay, it's zero, I mean this won't sell a single euro more, and that's it?
For us, we always aim for at least 3 times the investment, hopefully even more.
Okay, okay.
I didn't quite get the question.
Oh, no, yeah, maybe I was asking like, with you, how well established you are. Like, do you are confident that you can at least make the money back that you invested from developing a project? Like, at least that it is possible in the current environment.
I think I'd be lying if I say that's it's a definite. It always depends. If you have an established brand, obviously with a specific focus or a specific audience, you will tap into that audience. You know there's a certain player base that might be interested in your title. You should never promise a developer or ensure that you will make the money back and more, because that's just unrealistic. Things happen. Steam visibility doesn't work out, or a port is delivered late, or even just like a technical nightmare. That means that all your launch visibility is just gone. These things are out of your control. I think I'd say I'm rather confident that we will be able to make some money. Like there's not only sales, there's all these other business opportunities out there these days in the industry, which come with minimum guarantees or buyouts that will generate some revenue. So it's not a satisfying answer. I'd say no guarantees, but obviously there's a certain threshold that with every launch we're expecting to reach through various different sales channels and business opportunities.
I would say you still, as a publisher, you have the statistics of your older sales, your other titles, how they went. I think you can be a little confident in how many numbers you can sell. And I think we wouldn't sign with someone if we didn't know that we're going to be able to get this money back for the developer.
For us, it depends in some capacity. So we've definitely, or at labels that I've worked at, without going into too much details, we've signed titles due to the artistic vision, and we knew from the start they're not going to be a big money maker. But we figured it's important to put this game out there. It's important to work with this developer. In those cases, very transparent from the start. Like, this is our expectation. If you align, we don't think it's going to make millions, but the goal and that we're working towards is definitely generating some good revenue for you and for us, obviously, at the end of the day, to recoup as well. But I think there can be a mix of titles that are, as you'd said, like we have a big portfolio as publishers. There are titles that are bigger bets, that are titles that you invest into because you believe in them. Maybe not 100% from a commercial standpoint, but definitely in terms of the vision and believe that they should be made.
Well, that's true as well. Like, some titles are more experimental and it can be a little harder to calculate. Yes.
Well, all right. I think that's all I had for them. I don't know if you have any questions and I can bring them to them. Do you want to ask anything to this panel of publishers? Yeah. Well,
Let's come and sit. Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Julia, by the way. So my question is, when you receive a pitch, what do you actually expect to see there? Because you can, I don't know, you can go to internet, you can check for best practices on a pitch, or a lot of tips and a lot of guides, but there are people actually seeing this. So what do you like a person expect to see, and what could be interesting for you to see there?
Wow. So to begin with, make it very easy to access. So maybe not like a zip file we have to download. Maybe you can add it like on YouTube or Google Drive, all of the material. So it's like easy for us to look at. And also, yeah, we want to know who you are, what the audience is. We want to see that you yourself have made some kind of market research, and that you kind of know that the money you're asking for is realistic for this game as well that you're making. But then, yes, if the prototype is very early, it really helps as well to show some other kind of document, like some kind of design document about what is this game going to be. That's something many kind of forget about.
I will shamelessly self-promote something here because it's a really good and difficult question. There's a 1-hour talk that I did that's called The Art of the Pitch Deck on YouTube in case you're ever interested. It's, yeah, it goes into great detail. I'd say really important at the end of the day, obviously budget, timeline, so when you're roughly expecting to release, state of development, some rundown of the mechanics, or like the absolute bare minimum. Typically, I think a good pitch deck will end up somewhere between like 10 and 15 slides as a whole. The ideal state to pitch, and that's not a definite, like you can pitch it pretty much any stage depending on the publisher. It's probably if you have a vertical slice, something playable that gives me a very good impression of like what is the final game going to look like in terms of mechanics and quality as a whole, combined with the pitch deck. But yeah, like ideally have a good timeline, very much broken down, not just like a guesstimate and a budget breakdown, because more often than not, I see developers that are pitching a title at, let's say 200, it actually happened at some point, GDC a couple of years ago, a development team, wonderful team, great game. They pitched a game at $500,000 USD. And 3 weeks later, they came back to us after GDC and were like, all right, we now need 1.5 million because we recalculated. And that's fine, that happens. It's just not a great initial impression. So ideally in a state where you know very well what you're dealing with, what you need from a publishing party as well.
We actually have templates on rawfury.com for pitch decks as well. So download that and then you look at his talk and yeah.
What do you have to promote?
Well, just definitely check Chris' talk. I'm not a huge, you asked like for us personally, I'm not a huge fan of slides, like Google Slides, slide decks, pitch decks, however you want to call it. I'm not a huge fan. I think, I mean, they need to be there probably, you know, budget, roadmap, all whatever they said, right? But I think for me, the most important thing is get your game to have, igual lo hago en español, ¿no? No, I'm gonna try. Like get your game to say as much as possible in a playable way. You know, like don't talk me about mechanics. Just show me the mechanics. I want to see the mechanics, right? Like, of course, you need a deck for, you know, budgeting and roadmap or whatever, but just get your game to actually be the best presentation. You know, like something you can play, something you can feel. Then I think that's more convincing. Like, oh my God, like it's not a pitch deck. It's actually real. Like, it's great.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know if
You can stay if you want.
No, I will leave the place for more people.
More questions?
I think that's all the time we had. I'm afraid because it's already
We'll chat afterwards.
Yeah, I
somewhere
mean,
in the corner.
we're going to be hanging around here, so we can keep out talking about the hard questions outside here. Thank you all for listening to us, and have a great IndieDevDay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.